Friday night fell over New York City like a heavy blanket of lights and loneliness. From the top of the 23rd floor of the corporate building on Park Avenue, Ryan Miller watched the city transform into an ocean of headlights and neon. December had arrived with its promise of celebration and renewal, but for him, at 35, the month only meant another uncomfortable reminder of everything he didn't have. The glowing garlands decorating the surrounding buildings seemed to mock his empty existence, reflecting an image in the mirrored glass that he barely recognized anymore. Ryan was the kind of man everyone quietly envied. Founder of a tech company worth millions, divorced for 3 years from a marriage that never worked, owner of a penthouse apartment with a panoramic view and an imported car that spent more time in the garage than on the streets. His closet was full of Italian suits, his wrists sported Swiss watches, and his calendar was always packed with appointments that meant absolutely nothing to his heart. He was functional, efficient, successful, and completely hollow inside. That night, like so many others, he had been the last to leave the office. His assistant, Sharon, a competent woman in her 40s who had worked with him for 5 years, had left at 6 p.m., leaving a stack of documents on his desk that needed his signature before the following week. Ryan took the bottle of whiskey he kept in the built-in bar in his office and poured a generous glass. The amber liquid burned his throat as he sat in the leather armchair, staring at the papers with an indifference that had become his trademark. He began to flip through the contracts mechanically, signing where necessary, stamping here and there when something different caught his eye. Among the letter-headed sheets and financial reports was a simple small white envelope with a slightly crumpled edge. What intrigued him most was the uneven handwriting on the front, clearly done by a child, which read in shaky, colorful letters drawn with a red marker, "For Santa Claus." Ryan frowned. How had that ended up here? Sharon didn't have young children, he knew that. She had 2 adult sons and occasionally talked about them, but never mentioned small kids in the family. Curious in a way he hadn't felt in years, he turned the envelope over in his hands, feeling the cheap paper between his fingers. There was something touching about its simplicity, about an object so out of place in his world of steel and glass. For a moment, he thought about setting the envelope aside, returning it to Sharon on Monday without opening it. But something stronger compelled him. Maybe it was the loneliness of the night, maybe it was the whiskey starting to take effect, or maybe it was just the desperate need to feel anything other than the constant emptiness. Carefully he opened the envelope and pulled out a sheet of lined paper, the kind used in school notebooks. The letter was written in the same childish handwriting as the front of the envelope, some words smudged as if little fingers had touched the ink before it had completely dried. Ryan began to read, and with each line he felt something break inside him. "Dear Santa, my name is Laura and I'm 7 years old. My teacher at school said I could write to you and ask for what I want most for Christmas. I thought a lot about it. My friends are going to ask for toys and games, but I want something else. I want a dad. He doesn't have to be perfect, he can even be kind of annoying sometimes, but I wanted someone who would like me and my mum, and who would stay with us. My mum works a lot, and I know she gets sad when she thinks I don't see it. She thinks I don't notice, but I notice everything. When she looks at pictures of my friends with their dads, her eyes get all shiny like when you want to cry but you don't. I wanted to give this to her as a present. I wanted us to be a real family with someone who would come home and ask how our day was. Someone who would stay. Please, Santa, I was really good this year, I swear. Love, Laura." Ryan read the letter 3 times. The first time he felt a tightness in his chest that left him breathless. The second he had to blink several times to hold back something that threatened to spill from his eyes. The third, he allowed himself to feel the pain that those simple, devastating words carried. A dad. The girl didn't want dolls, bikes, or tablets. She wanted something he himself had never truly had. His own father had been a distant figure, more interested in building a business empire than in getting to know his son. When his parents divorced, Ryan was 9, and the bi-weekly visits quickly turned into monthly, then quarterly visits, until they stopped completely when he was 14. His mother, obsessed with her own career, had raised him with the help of nannies and expensive private schools, offering everything except her presence. He knew the pain of that absence intimately. He knew what it was like to look around and see whole families to feel like a puzzle piece that didn't fit anywhere. And now, decades later, a child he didn't even know was asking the universe for the same thing he had wished for so many times in silence as a boy. The difference was that she had the courage to put that wish into words. Ryan stood up and walked to the panoramic window, still holding the letter. Down below, people moved like ants, each with their own lives, their own stories, their own families waiting at home. He thought of his empty apartment, the king-size bed where he slept alone every night, the marble kitchen he never used because he always ate out or ordered in. He thought of the divorce that had happened because he was incapable of connecting emotionally with someone, because he had built walls so high around his heart that not even he could climb them anymore. And then he thought of Laura, a 7-year-old girl he didn't know, but who had somehow managed to do something no one else had in years. She had touched him, made him feel, awakened something that had been dormant for so long, he thought it was completely dead. The weekend passed in a strange haze. Ryan tried to distract himself with work, the gym, a failed attempt to watch a series on TV, but his thoughts constantly returned to that letter, to Laura and her mother. He imagined what their lives were like, the apartment where they lived, the hardships they faced. The letter didn't mention the father, only his absence, which suggested abandonment. Ryan knew that story. He knew its effects. On Monday morning, he arrived at the office earlier than usual. When Sharon showed up at 8 o'clock sharp, punctual as always, she found her boss waiting at the door, to his office. She immediately noticed that something was different. Ryan had an expression she had never seen before, a mix of determination and vulnerability that didn't match the man she knew. "Sharon, I need to talk to you. It's important." Ryan gestured for her to enter his office. She followed him, leaving her purse on the visitor's chair. "Did something happen, Mr. Miller?" Ryan took the letter from the drawer where he had kept it and handed it to her. "I found this among the documents you left on Friday. Can you explain?" Sharon looked at the envelope and her face immediately flushed. Her hands trembled slightly as she recognized the handwriting. "I'm so sorry. That shouldn't have been in there. It was my mistake." "Whose letter is this?" Ryan's voice was soft, with no trace of reprimand. Sharon sighed, seeming torn between embarrassment and something deeper. "It's my niece's, Laura. She's 7. Last Friday, my sister had an emergency at work and called me in a panic, asking me to pick her up from school. I brought her here to the office because I had no other choice. It was only for 2 hours until my sister could get away. Laura's a quiet kid. She just sat there drawing and doing her homework. She must have left the letter mixed in with the papers without me noticing. I'm really sorry, Mr. Miller. It won't happen again." Ryan listened to every word with an attention that bordered on intensity. "Your sister, her mother, tell me about them." Sharon blinked, surprised by the question. It wasn't the kind of thing Ryan usually asked about his employees' personal lives. "Well, my sister's name is Caroline. She's a kindergarten teacher at a public school in Queens. She's been raising Laura alone since she found out she was pregnant. The father disappeared when he heard about the pregnancy, never wanted to take responsibility. Caroline has always been strong, you know, but I know it's hard. Her salary isn't great. They live in a small rented apartment, and she does everything she can to give her daughter the best. Laura is an amazing kid, smart, affectionate. But I know she misses having a father figure. Caroline tries to make up for it, but there are things a single mother can't fill." Ryan nodded slowly, processing every piece of information. The picture was forming in his mind with painful clarity. "I want to meet them." "What?" Sharon's eyes widened. "Your sister and your niece. I want to meet them." His voice was firm, decisive. Sharon was silent for a long moment, studying her boss's face. "Mr. Miller, with all due respect, why? You don't even know them." Ryan looked at the letter again, its words echoing in his mind. "Because this letter touched me in a way nothing has in years. Because I know exactly what this little girl is feeling. And because I need to do something that actually means something." He raised his eyes to meet Sharon's. Please. There was something in his plea that disarmed Sharon's initial resistance. She had worked with Ryan long enough to know he wasn't a man of empty gestures or impulsive whims. If he was asking for this, it was because it truly mattered. I'll talk to my sister, but I have to be honest with you, she's very protective of Laura. She's been through a lot of disappointment and won't let anyone get close to her daughter if she's not sure of their intentions. She's going to ask tough questions. I understand, and I'm ready to answer them. The following days were tense in a way Ryan hadn't experienced in a long time. Sharon had called her sister that same Monday night, and the conversation hadn't been easy. Caroline was immediately suspicious, questioning the intentions of a rich, powerful man who suddenly showed interest in her daughter. It was exactly the reaction Sharon had predicted. Ryan couldn't blame her. The world was full of people with ulterior motives, and a single mother had every reason to be cautious. But Sharon was persistent. She had known her boss for years, knew that behind that corporate facade was a deeply lonely and, she believed, essentially good man. She explained to Caroline that Ryan wasn't offering charity or a handout, that he had been genuinely touched by Laura's letter and just wanted to meet them. He expected nothing in return, had no hidden agenda. He was simply a man searching for something missing in his own life. After 3 days of tense phone negotiations, Caroline finally agreed to a meeting. But she set strict conditions. The meeting would be on neutral, public ground, at the Christmas party at the school where she worked, which would take place the following Saturday. Ryan was to dress casually, no suits or displays of wealth. He would have half an hour to talk with Caroline before being introduced to Laura, and if at any moment she felt he wasn't sincere or that his intentions weren't pure, the meeting would end immediately, and she would ask him to never try to contact them again. Ryan accepted all the conditions without hesitation. In fact, he respected them. They showed that Caroline was exactly the kind of mother Laura deserved, someone who put her daughter's well-being above all else. During the week, he found himself constantly thinking about the upcoming meeting. What would he say to Caroline? How would he explain the whirlwind of emotions that letter had stirred in him? How could he convince a woman who didn't know him that his intentions were genuine when he barely understood what he was feeling himself? On Thursday night, Ryan was in his apartment trying to choose what to wear on Saturday when his cell phone rang. It was Sharon. She sounded nervous. "Mr. Miller, my sister asked me to make something clear. She said if you show up with a driver, security, or anything that highlights a social difference, she's leaving. The school is in a working-class neighborhood in Queens. The kids are from hard-working families. She doesn't want Laura or any other child to feel inferior or for you to feel uncomfortable. If you can't blend in that environment, it's better not to go." Ryan took a deep breath. "I'll take the subway and I'll go alone. You can tell her not to worry." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "The subway, sir? Do you know how to take the subway?" "It's been years since the last time, but yes, I do. And Sharon, please, when we're outside the office, you can call me Ryan." He heard the smile in her voice. "Okay, Ryan." On Saturday, Ryan woke up early with butterflies in his stomach he hadn't felt since he was a teenager. He chose a simple pair of jeans he'd bought years ago and rarely wore, a basic white shirt and casual sneakers. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized himself. Without the designer suit, without the luxury watch, without all the armor he normally wore, he just looked like an ordinary man. And in a way that made him more nervous than any business meeting he had ever faced. The subway ride was a revealing experience. Ryan couldn't remember the last time he'd been on public transportation. The station was crowded with people enjoying their Saturday, entire families going Christmas shopping, groups of animated young people, street vendors hawking their wares. The noise, the human warmth, the vibration of life happening all around him. It was all so different from the climate-controlled silence of his chauffeured car. He watched a father playing with his little daughter in the car, making her laugh by pretending the subway was a spaceship. The simple scene sparked a pang of envy in his chest. The school was 2 blocks from the station. It was an old but well-maintained building, with walls painted in cheerful colors and a playground where the party was already underway. Colorful balloons decorated the entrance, and children's music played from makeshift speakers. Kids ran back and forth in their best clothes, while parents chatted in lively groups. Ryan felt completely out of place for a moment. but he took a deep breath and walked through the gate. Sharon was waiting for him near the main door. She smiled when she saw him, clearly surprised and approving of his choice of clothes. "You really came by subway," she said, not as a question, but as an impressed statement. "I did. Now what? Where's your sister?" Sharon pointed to a woman across the playground. Caroline was squatting down, talking to one of the children, adjusting a bow in the girl's hair with evident care. She wore a simple floral cotton dress and flat sandals, her brown hair tied back in a practical ponytail. When she stood up and looked in their direction, Ryan felt as if the air had been sucked out of his lungs. Caroline wasn't beautiful in the conventional sense of the women he usually met at the social events he frequented. She didn't have the artificial, maintained beauty of someone who could afford expensive treatments. But there was something in her face, in her tired brown eyes, in her straight posture, despite the weight she clearly carried, that made her absolutely magnetic. It was a beauty born of resilience, of strength, forged in daily battles for survival and dignity. Ryan realized he was staring and looked away, embarrassed. Sharon introduced them formally. "Caroline, this is Ryan Miller, my boss. Ryan, my sister Caroline." Her hand was small and calloused when she shook his, but the grip was firm, almost challenging. "Mr. Miller." Her voice was controlled, polite, but there was a layer of ice to it. "Ryan, please. Just Ryan." He held her gaze, wanting her to see the sincerity in his eyes. Caroline studied him for a long moment, as if trying to read his soul through his eyes. "Sharon said you want to talk to me before meeting Laura." She pointed to a quieter corner of the playground. "Let's go over there." They walked in silence to a bench under a tree, far enough from the main hustle and bustle to have some privacy. Caroline sat down, but maintained her rigid, defensive posture. Ryan sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "So," she began without preamble, "why does a rich, successful businessman want to meet my daughter? And don't give me any pretty stories about charity or kindness. I want the truth." Ryan felt the weight of the question. This was the moment for complete honesty. "I read her letter, the letter she wrote to Santa Claus." Caroline closed her eyes. For a moment, her jaw tight. Sharon shouldn't have let that get out. It wasn't her fault, and I'm grateful it happened because that letter changed something in me. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Caroline, I'm going to be completely honest with you. My life looks perfect from the outside. Money, success, recognition. But inside, I'm empty. I'm divorced. I have no close family, no real friends. I've spent the last few years building a company and losing everything that really matters. When I read your daughter's request when she said she wanted a dad who would like her and who would stay, something inside me broke, because I know exactly what it's like to grow up without that. My father was never really present, and my mother was too busy building her career. I know that loneliness, that hole that nothing can fill." Caroline watched him with an unreadable expression. "And what do you want from us?" "I can't quite explain it," Ryan admitted. "It's not pity. It's not charity. It's something deeper. When I read that letter, I felt for the first time in years that maybe I could do something that really meant something. That maybe I could be for Laura what no one was for me. I know it sounds crazy. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I'm asking for a chance to prove that my intentions are sincere. And what if you get tired of this idea? What if you find out that the reality of having a child in your life isn't as romantic as it seems? What if you get bored of us and leave?" Caroline's voice trembled slightly. "My daughter has already suffered enough from her father's absence. I won't let anyone else break her heart." Ryan felt the pain in those words, and something inside him responded with a determination he didn't know he possessed. "I won't leave. I promise you that if you give me a chance, I won't give up when things get hard or real. Because that's exactly what I'm looking for. The real, the hard, the messy, everything my life doesn't have." Caroline was silent for a long time, her eyes fixed on the children playing in the distance. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer, but still laced with caution. "Laura will be in the choir in half an hour. You can watch. Afterwards, if I still think your intentions are genuine, I'll introduce you to her. But if at any moment I feel you're being fake, or that you're going to hurt her, you will leave and never come back. Understood?" "Understood," Ryan agreed without hesitation. The next 30 minutes were the longest of Ryan's life. He stood at the back of the playground while the final preparations were made for the choir performance. Caroline had joined the other teachers to organize the children. He watched her work, noticing the infinite patience with which she treated each student, the genuine smile that lit up her face when one of the kids managed to get their position right. There was a beauty in her dedication that touched him deeply. Then the children climbed onto the small makeshift stage, and Ryan saw her. Laura. She was in the second row, wearing a simple red dress with a white bow, her light brown hair in 2 braids. Her large, expressive eyes shone with excitement as she searched for someone in the audience. When she found Caroline, her whole face lit up with a smile that could rival the sun. The music started, and the children sang with that adorable lack of coordination typical of a children's choir. Some forgot the words, others sang off-key, but none of it mattered. It was pure joy. And Laura sang with all her heart, gesturing animatedly, completely immersed in the moment. Ryan felt something strange happening in his chest, an emotion he couldn't name, but that made him completely forget where he was. In that moment, watching that 7-year-old girl sing about reindeer and sleighs, he knew with absolute certainty that his life had changed forever. There was no going back. No matter what happened from then on, that child and her mother had become important to him in a way that defied all logic. When the performance ended, to warm applause from parents and teachers, the children descended from the stage in a joyful chaos of hugs and praise. Laura ran straight to Caroline, who scooped her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. Ryan watched the scene with a lump in his throat, aware that he was witnessing something precious and intimate, a moment between mother and daughter that he had no right to interrupt. But then Caroline saw him standing there, and after a moment of visible hesitation, walked in his direction with Laura still in her arms. The girl looked at Ryan with that uninhibited curiosity that only children possess, tilting her head to the side as if trying to figure him out. "Laura, this is the person Mommy wanted you to meet. This is Ryan." Caroline set her daughter down, keeping a protective hand on her shoulder. "Ryan is Aunt Sharon's friend." Ryan crouched down to be at Laura's level, an instinctive gesture he didn't even know he knew how to make. "Hi, Laura, you sang beautifully up there." Laura smiled, revealing a missing baby tooth in the front. "Thanks, are you nice?" The question came out with the brutal frankness of children, without filters or ulterior motives. Ryan couldn't help a genuine smile, the first in a long time. "I hope so. I'm trying very hard to be nice." The answer seemed to satisfy Laura, who shrugged and then asked, "Do you like ice cream? Because Mommy promised we'd get ice cream after the party if I didn't get nervous in the choir." "I love ice cream," Ryan replied, looking to Caroline for permission. She nodded slightly, still cautious. But something in her expression had softened. The trio ended up at a small ice cream shop a few blocks from the school. It was a family-owned place, with faded blue walls and ceiling fans that spun lazily. Laura ordered 2 scoops with chocolate syrup, and Ryan surprised himself by ordering the same, something he would never normally do. They sat at a small plastic table outside, and Ryan found himself completely fascinated listening to Laura talk about her favorite cartoons, her best friend at school, and how she wanted to be an astronaut when she grew up, because space was infinite and full of mysteries. Caroline remained silent for most of the time, observing the interaction between Ryan and her daughter with watchful eyes, looking for any sign of insincerity or impatience. But what she saw was something that left her simultaneously reassured and frightened. Ryan was genuinely interested. He listened to Laura with total attention, asked intelligent questions, and laughed at her childish jokes as if they were the funniest things in the world. There was no condescension in his posture, just genuine curiosity and something that looked dangerously like affection. When Laura got up to throw away her ice cream cup, Caroline took advantage of the moment of privacy to speak. "You're good with her." Ryan looked at Caroline, surprised by the comment. "It's easy to be good with her. She's incredible. She is, Caroline agreed, but then added with a seriousness that cut like a razor. But she's also vulnerable. She wants a father so badly that she might get attached too quickly, and if that happens and you change your mind about all this, it will break her heart. I'm not going to change my mind. Ryan's response was immediate and firm. I know. You don't trust me yet, Caroline. I know you have no reason to, but I'm asking for time to prove that I'm sincere. Caroline studied him for a long moment before sighing. Okay, you can visit us on weekends, but slowly. Laura needs to get used to you gradually, and I need to be sure you're not going to disappear from her life. I accept any condition you want to set, Ryan said, and he meant every word. Laura came running back, and the conversation was interrupted. But something had changed. A door had been opened, even if only a crack, and Ryan was determined to prove he deserved to walk through it. The following weekends became something Ryan looked forward to with an anxiety that bordered on adolescent. He even cancelled an important business dinner because it coincided with the Saturday he had arranged to take Laura to the park, something that would have been unthinkable a few weeks earlier. Sharon observed the changes in her boss with a mixture of surprise and satisfaction. Ryan smiled more, seemed lighter, less consumed by the bitterness that had become his constant companion in recent years. On the first Saturday, Ryan took Laura to Central Park. Caroline insisted on coming along, still not comfortable leaving her daughter alone with someone she barely knew, and Ryan didn't protest. They walked through the gardens, Laura running ahead to chase pigeons and examine flowers, while Ryan and Caroline followed in a silence that gradually became less uncomfortable. You really took the subway again, Caroline observed when they saw Ryan arrive at the station where they had agreed to meet. I always do, he replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, despite having a private driver waiting in his building's garage. Why? Caroline stopped walking and faced him. You have enough money to come by helicopter if you wanted. Why are you doing this? Ryan looked at Laura, who was crouched down examining a trail of ants with childish fascination. Because I want to be part of your world, not bring you into mine. My world is empty, Caroline, full of things, but empty of meaning. Your world has something mine never had. It has real life. The answer seemed to disarm Caroline once again. She looked away, but Ryan noticed her shoulders relax a little. In the following Saturdays, Ryan began to be gradually included in more intimate aspects of their lives. Caroline invited him for lunch at her apartment, a small two-bedroom in a housing complex in Queens. The place was modest, with old but well-cared-for furniture, walls decorated with Laura's drawings and family photos. But there was a warmth there, a sense of home, that Ryan's luxurious apartment had never had. The smell of home-cooked food coming from the kitchen, the organized mess of Laura's toys scattered around the living room, the plants on the balcony that Caroline tended with care, all of it was so far removed from the sterile, impersonal world where he lived that Ryan felt as if he had stepped through a door into another dimension. He began to learn about their lives organically. He discovered that Caroline woke up at 5 every morning to make breakfast, get Laura ready for school, and get to work on time. That she graded papers and prepared lessons at night after Laura was asleep, often staying up late. That she dreamed of getting a master's degree, but had neither the time nor the money for it. That Laura loved books about space and dreamed of visiting the planetarium, but they hadn't been able to go yet because the tickets were expensive, and Caroline always prioritized other, more urgent needs. One Saturday, Ryan showed up with 3 tickets to the Hayden Planetarium. Caroline was visibly moved, but also hesitant. Ryan, you don't have to keep giving us things. I'm not giving things, he replied softly. I'm sharing experiences, and I want to see Laura's face when she sees the stars. The visit to the planetarium was magical. Laura was mesmerized, asking a million questions that Ryan answered with a patience that surprised even himself. He had researched astronomy all week, wanting to be prepared to feed the girl's curiosity. Caroline watched it all with shining eyes, and Ryan noticed that she looked at him with a different expression, less guarded, more open. On the way out, while Laura ran ahead excitedly, Caroline touched Ryan's arm, making him stop. "Thank you," she said simply, but there was a world of emotion in that one word. "Thank you," Ryan replied, "for letting me be a part of this, for giving me the chance to be important to someone." Caroline opened her mouth to say something, but Laura came running back, breaking the moment. "Look, Mommy, Ryan, there's a gift shop. Can I look?" "Of course, sweetie," Caroline replied, and the three of them went inside together. The weeks passed, and something subtle but profound was happening. Ryan was no longer a kind stranger. He was becoming a constant and expected presence in their lives. Laura began to count on him, to include him in her plans and stories. "Mommy, can we show Ryan that new drawing on Saturday? Can Ryan come over for dinner? I think Ryan would like this book my teacher showed me." And Caroline, despite all her initial resistance, was allowing herself to trust. More than that, she was starting to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time, something dangerous and wonderful at the same time. She found herself thinking about Ryan during the week, smiling when she remembered something funny he had said, missing his presence on the days he wasn't there. One Thursday night, while grading papers at the kitchen table after Laura had gone to sleep, Caroline found herself reflecting on the past few weeks. Ryan had become part of their lives in a way that was so natural, it was scary. He didn't try to impress with money or expensive gifts. He simply showed up, present and attentive. He helped Laura with her homework, listened to Caroline talk about the challenges at the school where she worked, offered to help with small household chores without being asked. It was as if he had always been there, filling a space she didn't even know existed. But the fear was still there. The fear that this was too good to be true. That Ryan would wake up one day and realize their life was too simple, too hard, too insufficient for someone accustomed to so much luxury and ease. And what would that do to Laura? Worse, what would it do to her, who was dangerously close to falling in love with this man who had appeared in their lives carrying a letter and a heart as broken as her own? Caroline put down her pen and rubbed her tired eyes. Tomorrow she would have to face these questions. Tomorrow she would have to have an honest conversation with Ryan about where exactly all this was going, because things couldn't continue in this undefined zone forever. Not when there was a child involved, not when her own heart was becoming more and more committed. Summer arrived with all its characteristic New York heat, and with it, the school holidays. Laura was radiant at the prospect of weeks off, and Ryan had arranged his work schedule to have more time available. He began to show up not just on weekends, but also on some afternoons during the week, always asking beforehand if he could visit, always respecting the boundaries Caroline set. It was on one of those January afternoons, when the heat made it impossible to stay indoors, that the moment that would change everything happened. Ryan had taken Laura for ice cream while Caroline took the opportunity to get ahead on planning for the next school semester. When they returned, they found Caroline on the balcony, surrounded by papers and textbooks, her face marked by concentration. "Mommy works too much," Laura whispered to Ryan as they entered. "She never stops." Ryan watched Caroline for a moment, noticing the dark circles under her eyes, the way she massaged her own temples as if she had a headache. Something moved inside him, a desire to care for her, to lighten the burden she had carried alone for so long. "Caroline," he called softly so as not to startle her, "why don't you rest for a bit? I can help with this." She looked up, surprised. "You? Help with kindergarten lesson planning? Why not? I may not know anything about pedagogy, but I know how to organize information, and I'm sure I can at least sort these papers while you rest." Caroline hesitated, but exhaustion won out over her natural resistance. "Okay, but only because I'm really tired." She got up and went to take a shower, leaving Ryan alone with the pile of work. He sat, in the chair she had occupied, and began to examine the documents. They were lesson plans, creative activities, child development assessments. Each paper bore meticulous notes in Caroline's handwriting, observations about each student, ideas on how to reach those who had more difficulty. It was clear how much she cared, how much individual attention each child under her care received. Laura appeared with her drawing pads and sat next to Ryan, drawing quietly while he worked. It was a simple, even ordinary domestic scene, but for Ryan it was revolutionary. Here he was, a man who ran a multi-million-dollar company, spending a Wednesday afternoon organizing school papers, while a 7-year-old girl drew beside him, and feeling more fulfilled than he had in any professional achievement in recent years. Caroline returned from her shower with her hair still damp, wearing a light cotton dress. She stopped at the balcony door, observing the scene before her. Ryan bent over her papers, his brow furrowed in concentration, while Laura rested her head on his arm, showing him a drawing of a family with 3 people and a dog. Caroline's heart ached painfully in her chest. This felt right in a way. That was terrifying. "You organized everything," Caroline observed, approaching the table. "It's all separated by week and by type of activity." Ryan smiled, clearly proud of himself. "Project management is kind of my specialty, even if they're usually tech projects and not 5-year-olds learning their colors." Caroline sat across from him, and for the first time since they met, there was no tension in her shoulders. "Thank you. Really. Not just for this, but for everything. For showing up, for staying, for not giving up when I was difficult at the beginning." "You had every right to be cautious," Ryan replied. "You still do. I'm a stranger who just appeared in your lives out of nowhere." "You're not a stranger anymore," Caroline said softly, and then, as if she had made an important decision, she added, "Ryan, we need to talk about what's happening here, about where this is going." Laura, sensing the serious tone, stood up. "I'm going to watch cartoons inside," she announced, with the sharp intuition of children who know when adults need to talk alone. When they were alone, Caroline took a deep breath before she began. "You've been spending a lot of time with us. Laura is getting attached to you, I'm getting attached to you. And I need to know if you're really committed to this, or if it's just a phase, something you're doing to fill a temporary void. Because if it's just that, you need to leave now, before it's too late." Ryan felt the weight of those words. It was the question he knew would come eventually, and he had thought a lot about the answer. "Caroline, I know my track record doesn't help. I'm divorced. I have a reputation for being cold. I've spent years building walls around myself. But ever since I read that letter, ever since I met you and Laura, something changed. It's not a phase, it's not a whim. You've become the most important people in my life. When I'm at the office, I think about you. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is check if I have a message from you. My weekends used to be empty, filled with work or loneliness. Now they're the part of the week I look forward to the most because I'll be with you. And what exactly do you want from us?" Caroline's voice trembled slightly. "Do you want to be a family friend, an occasional presence, or do you want something more?" Ryan held her gaze, letting her see all the truth in his eyes. "I want everything. I want to wake up thinking about you every day. I want to be here when Laura gets home from school. I want to help when things get tough. I want to share not just the good times, but the bad ones too. I want to be the person you call when you're tired, frustrated, happy, scared. I want to be the dad Laura asked for in that letter. And I want more. I want you, Caroline. I don't know when it happened exactly, but I fell in love with you. For your strength, your dedication, the way you love your daughter, for the incredible woman you are despite all the hardships you've faced." Caroline was silent for a long moment, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Do you have any idea how long it's been since someone said something like that to me? How long it's been since someone wanted not just Laura but me too?" "I can imagine," Ryan said softly. "And I'm so sorry you've spent so much time alone, carrying everything on your shoulders. But you don't have to be alone anymore. Not if you don't want to be." "I'm scared," Caroline confessed, the tears finally escaping. "I'm scared to believe this and have you leave. I'm scared Laura will get hurt. I'm scared I'll get hurt. I'm scared your life is too big and ours is too small, and that eventually you'll realize that." Ryan stood up and walked over to her, kneeling beside her chair. He took her hands in his. "Look at me." Caroline obeyed, her eyes meeting his. "My life isn't big, Caroline, it's empty. Full of things but empty of meaning. You gave me something that all the money in the world can't buy. You gave me a purpose. You gave me a chance to be a better person than I was. You gave me love. So don't be afraid that I'll find your life too small. Be afraid that I'll never want to leave." Caroline let out a wet laugh through her tears. "You're very good with words. They're not just words. It's the truth. He squeezed her hands. Give me a chance. A real chance to be part of your family, to be what Laura asked for and what you deserve. Caroline looked at their intertwined hands, at this man who had appeared in their lives so improbably, and felt something let go inside her. The fear was still there, but there was something stronger now. Hope, trust, and yes, love. Okay, she whispered, but slowly. Laura needs to understand what's happening, and you need to be absolutely sure before you make us promises you can't keep. I'm sure, Ryan said with a conviction that surprised them both. More sure than I've been. Of anything in my life. They stayed like that for a moment, looking at each other, and then Ryan leaned in and kissed her softly. It was a chaste kiss, full of promise and care, and when they pulled away, they were both smiling. From inside the living room came Laura's excited voice. "Mommy, Ryan, come see this cartoon that's on. It's about a family that adopts a dog." Caroline and Ryan looked at each other and laughed. "Let's go," Caroline said, holding Ryan's hand as they went inside to join Laura on the couch. The following days were different. There was a new lightness in the air, a silent understanding that something had changed between them. Ryan began to participate even more actively in their routine. He helped Caroline paint Laura's room, which had needed a refresh for months. He took Laura to swimming on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because Caroline had teacher meetings on those days. He learned to make Laura's favorite pasta, and surprised them both with a dinner he cooked himself at his apartment, where he finally invited them to visit. Laura was dazzled by the view from the 20th floor, but commented that she thought the place was too big and too empty. "It needs more color," she declared with authority, "and plants and pictures on the wall. This looks like a hotel, not a home." Ryan looked around, seeing his apartment through her eyes, and realized she was absolutely right. "Maybe you two can help me make it more like a home then." Laura hugged his leg. "Can I bring some of my drawings for you to hang up?" "Please do. I'd love that." February arrived, bringing with it the return of school and a more established routine. Ryan had become a constant presence in Caroline and Laura's life, but he still kept his apartment and his professional life separate from the small universe they had built together. It was as if he lived in two parallel worlds, never fully belonging to either. One afternoon, while Ryan was in an important meeting with international investors, his cell phone vibrated with a message from Caroline. It was a photo of Laura holding a participation trophy from a school math competition with a radiant smile. The message just said, "She wanted you to see it first." Ryan looked at the photo and felt that familiar tightness in his chest. First. She wanted him to see it first. Not her grandmother, not her school friends, but him. When had he become that person in this child's life? When had he become important enough to share the small triumphs with First? He quickly excused himself from the meeting, typed an effusive reply congratulating Laura, and when he turned his attention back to the numbers on the screen in front of him, he realized they no longer meant anything. The growth charts, the profit projections, the expansion strategies, everything that was once his entire life now seemed extraordinarily empty compared to the smile of a 7-year-old girl holding a plastic trophy. That night, Ryan showed up at Caroline's house with a bouquet of flowers for Laura and a box of chocolates for Caroline. Laura greeted him with an enthusiastic hug, recounting every detail of the competition, how she had been nervous at first, but then remembered everything Ryan had helped her study in the preceding weeks. "You helped me win," she said, with the absolute conviction of children. "When I didn't know an answer, I thought about what you had explained to me, and then I remembered." Ryan felt his eyes burn. To see himself reflected in that child's achievement, to know he had contributed in some way to her happiness and growth, was more gratifying than any business award he had ever received. After Laura went to sleep, Caroline and Ryan sat talking on the balcony, as had become their custom. The night was warm, and the sound of the city in the distance created a familiar soundtrack for their nightly conversations. "She loves you, you know," Caroline said softly, watching Ryan with that expression he had learned to recognize, half tender, half apprehensive. "She sees you as the father. She never had. When she talks to her friends at school, it's always Ryan this, Ryan that. Another mother stopped me the other day and asked about you." "And what did you say?" Ryan asked, curious. That you're someone special, someone who came into our lives and decided to stay. Caroline paused. But you know what scares me? It's that I don't know how to explain to her what you are exactly. You're not my husband. You're not officially her stepfather. You're just Ryan, this constant presence who could disappear at any moment because there's nothing really tying us together. Ryan was quiet for a moment, processing her words. He knew this conversation would come eventually. They had avoided defining exactly what they were to each other, but they couldn't stay in that undefined zone forever. "Do you want me to define what we are?" he asked carefully. "I want to know if you're in this for the long haul," Caroline replied with that brutal honesty he had come to admire. "Because Laura isn't the only one getting attached. I am too, and unlike her, I know the world isn't a fairy tale. I know things can end. And if they're going to end, I'd rather it be now before it hurts even more." Ryan turned to face her completely. "Caroline, do you remember when we first met and you asked me what I wanted? I said I wanted everything, and I meant it. I want to be Laura's father. I want to be your partner. I want to wake up with you, sleep with you, be here when things get tough. I'm not here temporarily. I'm here because I found the place where I belong." "Then why do you still have your apartment? Why do you still live separately?" "From us?" Caroline's voice trembled slightly. "Why does it feel like you have one foot in each world, ready to go back to yours when ours gets too complicated?" The words hit Ryan like a punch to the gut, because there was truth in them. He had allowed himself to love, allowed himself to be part of this family, but he had kept an emergency exit, a place to return to if things went wrong. And he realized now that it wasn't fair to any of them. "You're right," he admitted. "I'm scared. Scared I'm not good enough, that I'll mess everything up, that I'll disappoint you. My track record with relationships isn't exactly stellar. And you think mine is?" Caroline laughed humorlessly. "I was abandoned while pregnant by a man who swore he loved me. I raised a child alone for 7 years. I learned the hard way that promises are easy to make and hard to keep, but I'm here, allowing myself to trust you despite all the fear. I'm allowing myself to imagine a future with you. The question is, are you doing the same?" "I am," Ryan said with urgency, taking her hands. "I swear I am. And you're right about everything. I need to stop keeping one foot out. I need to truly commit." "Then show me," Caroline pleaded, her eyes shining with restrained tears. "Not with words, with actions. Show me you're really here." In the following days, Ryan began to make concrete changes. He started moving parts of his wardrobe to Caroline's apartment, his toothbrushes sharing space with hers in the bathroom. He started arriving for dinner, not as a visitor, but as someone who belonged there. He helped Laura with her homework at the kitchen table while Caroline cooked dinner, and the domestic scene no longer felt temporary, but like a preview of what they could be. But there was still the matter of his apartment, the company, that whole parallel life he maintained. And it was Sharon who finally forced the issue. One Thursday morning, she walked into his office with a determined expression. "You need to decide," she said bluntly. "My sister is falling in love with you. Actually, I think she already has. And Laura sees you as a father. But you're still living with one foot in each world, and that's not fair to them, or to you." Ryan sighed, running his hands through his hair. I know I need to make a real choice." "Then make it," Sharon insisted, "because if you don't commit completely, you're going to lose them both, and this time it won't be fate's fault or bad timing. It will be because you chose fear over love." Sharon's words echoed in Ryan's mind all day. When night came, he found himself driving not to Caroline's apartment, but to his own empty one. He walked through the impeccable cold rooms, looking at the spectacular view that once impressed him. Everything there was. Perfect on paper, the flawless design, the expensive decor, the privileged view. But there was no life, no child's laughter echoing through the halls, no smell of home cooking, no Caroline humming while folding laundry, no Laura showing off her drawings on the fridge. It was a museum, not a home. He picked up the phone and called Caroline. When she answered, her voice was tired, and he realized it was late, and she was probably grading papers. "Hey," she said, "I thought you were coming for dinner. Sorry, I had to take care of a few things." Ryan took a deep breath. "Caroline, can I come over? I need to talk to you." Of course, but Laura's already asleep. It was a long day. I know, but it's you I need to talk to. 20 minutes later, Ryan was at Caroline's door. She greeted him in her pajamas, her hair in a messy bun. No makeup, beautifully imperfect. She led him to the living room, where her work materials were spread across the couch. "Sorry about the mess," she started, gathering the papers. "No, leave it," Ryan said, taking her hand. "Sit here with me. I need to tell you something." Caroline sat down, suddenly looking nervous. "You're breaking up with us, aren't you? I knew it. I knew it was too good to be true." "No, God, no." Ryan held her face in his hands. "It's the opposite of that. I spent the afternoon in my apartment looking around, trying to remember why any of that was ever important to me. And I couldn't. Because it's not important. None of it matters. What matters is here, you and Laura. You're my family now. You're my home." Caroline started to cry silently. "Ryan, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to sell my apartment. I want to live here with you if you'll have me. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to make breakfast for Laura before school. I want to share the bills, the responsibilities, the worries, and the joys. I want to be a real father to her, not just a frequent visitor. And I want to be your partner, Caroline. Your partner in everything." He wiped her tears with his thumbs. "I love you. And I love Laura. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to both of you every single day." Caroline sobbed and threw her arms around his neck. "I love you too, so much, but I'm so scared." "I know, me too, but we'll be scared together." He kissed her softly. "What do you say? Will you build a life with me? For real this time?" Caroline nodded through her tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Christmas was approaching again, marking almost a year since Ryan had found the letter that would change his life forever. The past few weeks had been a roller coaster of emotions and practical changes. Ryan had put his apartment up for sale and started gradually moving his things into Caroline's apartment, each box that arrived further transforming the space into a true shared home. Laura was ecstatic about the changes, helping to organize Ryan's things, making sure he had a special place for his ties on the closet door and reserving an entire shelf for his books. But there was something Ryan hadn't done yet, something he had been planning for weeks that made him more nervous than any business presentation he had ever faced. He had a plan for Christmas morning, but first he needed the approval of the most important person in this story, besides Caroline. 3 days before Christmas, Ryan asked Caroline if he could take Laura for ice cream alone. She agreed, sensing he had something in mind, but not knowing exactly what. Ryan took Laura to the same ice cream shop where they had gone on the first day they met, that small, family-owned place that now held so many memories. As Laura savored her 2-scoop ice cream, Ryan took a deep breath and began. "Laura, can I ask you a serious question?" The girl looked at him with those big, curious eyes. "Of course, you can always ask me questions." "You know I love you and your mum very much, right?" Laura nodded enthusiastically. "And you know I want to spend the rest of my life with you both." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But there's something very important I need to do, and I can only do it if you agree." "What is it?" Laura tilted her head, intrigued. Ryan took a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside were 2 rings, a delicate engagement ring and a smaller, simpler ring. "I want to ask your mom to marry me on Christmas Day. But before I do that, I need to ask for your permission, because you two are a package deal. So I'm asking you, Laura, would you give me the privilege of officially becoming part of your family, of being your real dad?" Laura's eyes widened, and for a moment Ryan feared she would cry, but then a huge smile lit up her face. "For real? You're going to be my real dad? With papers and everything?" "With papers and everything," Ryan confirmed, his eyes burning. "If your mom says yes, of course." "She'll say yes," Laura said with absolute certainty. "She cries when she watches those romantic movies on TV and tells Aunt Sharon on the phone that you're the love of her life. I hear her when she thinks I'm asleep." Ryan laughed, moved and relieved. "So I have your permission?" Laura jumped from her chair and threw her arms around his neck. "You always had my permission, ever since you showed up at the school party. I asked Santa for a dad, and he sent you." Ryan hugged the girl, feeling tears stream down his face. He had arrived in this city a year ago an empty man, and now here he was, hugging his daughter, because that's what Laura was now, planning to propose to the woman he loved. How could life change so completely in such a short time? They planned everything together over the next few days, Laura thrilled to be a co-conspirator in the proposal. Ryan bought rare astronomy books he knew Laura had been coveting for months, and a professional set of paints and brushes for Caroline, who always talked about how she'd love to start painting again, but never had the time or proper materials. But the most important gift, the rings he kept hidden, waiting for the right moment. Christmas morning dawned bright and warm, typical of a New York summer. Ryan had slept on the couch the night before, insisting it was tradition not to see the bride before the ceremony, which made Caroline laugh and Laura clap her hands excitedly. When he woke up, the sun was already high, and he could hear Caroline and Laura talking animatedly in the kitchen, preparing a special Christmas breakfast. He took a quick shower, put on the clothes he had set aside, light dress pants and a simple but elegant white shirt. When he entered the kitchen, they both turned at the same time, and Ryan's heart skipped a beat. Caroline was wearing a light yellow dress that highlighted her tan skin, her hair down in natural waves. Laura had on a red dress with a white bow, reminiscent of the one she wore the day they met. "Good morning," Caroline said with a smile that lit up the entire kitchen. "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," Ryan replied, walking over and kissing her softly. "To you too, little astronaut," he said, affectionately ruffling Laura's hair, who giggled and dodged away. Breakfast was cheerful and noisy, filled with lively conversation and laughter. They had invited Sharon and her family for lunch later, but that morning was just for the three of them, the little family they had built against all odds. After breakfast, they sat in the living room to exchange gifts. Laura opened hers first, screaming with joy when she saw the astronomy book she had wished for. "Ryan, these books are expensive. How did you know I wanted them?" "A little bird told me," Ryan winked, and Caroline rolled her eyes, knowing he had discreetly asked weeks before. Caroline opened her gift and was visibly moved by the professional paints. "Ryan, this is too much. I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," he insisted. "You deserve to have time for your passions, not just work. And I want to see your paintings decorating our home." "Our home," Caroline repeated softly, her eyes shining. "I like the sound of that." Then it was Ryan's turn to open his gifts. Laura had made a drawing of him, Caroline and herself, with a dog she still hoped they would one day adopt. It was touching in its simplicity, and Ryan promised to frame it and hang it in his office. Caroline gave him a simple but elegant watch with an engraving on the back that read, "For the man who gave us time. Love, Carol and Laura." Ryan held the watch for a long moment, reading and rereading the inscription. Then he looked at the two women who had transformed his life and knew it was time. "I have one more gift too," he said, his voice slightly shaky. "But it's different. It's a gift that only works if you both say yes." Caroline frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" Ryan stood up and, to Caroline's surprise, knelt on the living room floor. Laura started to smile, knowing what was coming. He took the small box from his pocket and opened it, revealing the 2 rings. Caroline brought a hand to her mouth, her eyes immediately filling with tears. "Ryan." "Wait, let me talk," he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Caroline, when I came into your life almost a year ago, I was a broken man pretending to be whole. I had everything materially and nothing emotionally. And then I found a letter written by a brave little girl, asking for something she thought was impossible." He looked at Laura, whose eyes were shining. "And that letter led me to you. It led me to both of you. And you saved me. You gave me a purpose, a home, a family. You taught me what it means to truly love, without reservations, without fear." He turned his gaze back to Caroline. "You are the strongest, most beautiful, most incredible woman I have ever met. And I want to spend the rest of my life loving you, supporting you, being your partner in everything. He picked up the smaller ring. And Laura, he looked at the girl, I want to be your dad, not just in practice but officially. I want you to take my name if you want. I want to be at every school meeting, at every important moment in your life. I want to be the person you call Dad. He took a deep breath, looking at them both. So I'm asking both of you, will you have me? Will you officially build a life with me? Will you marry me? Laura jumped off the couch and ran to hug him. Yes, 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 I always wanted to say yes. Caroline was crying openly now, her hands trembling. Ryan, are you sure, absolutely sure? Because if you say yes now, there's no going back. You'll be ours forever. I want to be yours forever, Ryan said with total conviction. It's the only certainty I have in life. Caroline slid off the couch and knelt with them on the floor, taking Ryan's face in her hands. Then yes, 1,000 times yes. I love you so much. Ryan placed the ring on her finger with trembling hands and then, with equal care, placed the smaller ring on Laura's finger. The three of them hugged there in the middle of the messy living room with wrapping paper everywhere, and for a long moment they said nothing, just held each other, a family finally complete. Laura was the first to break the silence. Santa answered my wish, she whispered in awe. I asked for a dad who would like us and stay, and he sent you. Ryan wiped the tears from his own face. Actually, little astronaut, I think you saved me. You and your mom saved me from a life that had no meaning. The rest of the day passed in a happy haze. When Sharon and her family arrived for lunch, they were greeted with the news of the engagement. Sharon hugged her brother tightly, whispering in his ear, I'm so proud of you. You finally found what you were looking for. Lunch was loud and joyful, full of toasts and laughter. Laura couldn't stop showing everyone her ring, excitedly explaining that now Ryan was going to be her real dad. Caroline was radiant, and Ryan couldn't stop looking at her, still in disbelief at his good fortune. In the afternoon, after everyone had left, the three of them went for a walk in the park. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. They sat on a bench, Laura in the middle, each of her parents holding one of her hands. Can I ask a question? Laura broke the comfortable silence. Always, Ryan and Caroline answered in unison, then laughed at the synchronicity. When are you guys getting married for real, with a party and cake and everything? Ryan looked at Caroline over Laura's head. What do you think, soon? Or do you want to wait? Caroline smiled. Soon. Why? Wait when we're already sure. Can I be the flower girl? Laura asked excitedly. You'll be much more than that, Caroline said, kissing the top of her head. You'll be the reason for everything. If it weren't for your letter, none of this would have happened. Laura thought about that for a moment. So I'm like a fairy godmother. Who made you guys meet? Ryan laughed. Exactly. You're our fairy godmother, and our astronaut, and our artist, and the most amazing girl in the world. They stayed there until the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Ryan thought about how his life had completely changed. A year ago, he was alone in his office, looking out at the city with an existential emptiness that seemed impossible to fill. And now he was here, with a family, with a purpose, with love, all because of a letter written by a brave little girl who believed in miracles. As they walked back home, the three of them holding hands, Ryan realized that this moment was the perfect embodiment of everything he had been searching for his whole life without knowing it. It wasn't financial success, it wasn't professional recognition. It was this, the simplicity of walking beside the people he loved, knowing he had a place in the world where he completely belonged. It was being needed, being wanted, being part of something bigger than himself. It was, finally, having a home. That night, after Laura fell asleep wearing her new ring, Caroline and Ryan stood on the balcony, as had become their custom. The city lights twinkled in the distance, but their world was right there, in that small apartment filled with love and life. You know everything has changed, right? Caroline said softly, leaning against his chest. There's no going back now. I don't want to go back, Ryan answered, kissing her hair. I found everything I was ever looking for right here, with you. "I still find it hard to believe sometimes," she confessed, "that you just appeared out of nowhere and completely changed our lives. That Laura's letter, which I didn't even know she'd written, brought you to us." "It wasn't the letter," Ryan corrected gently. "It was Laura. It was you. You two found me when I was lost. The letter was just the map." Caroline turned in his arms, looking him in the eyes. "Are you really happy? You don't miss your old life?" "Not for a second," he answered without hesitation. "That wasn't a life, Caroline. It was just an existence. This," he gestured around them, this is real life. This beautiful mess, this imperfect routine, this love that asks for nothing in return. This is everything I ever wanted without knowing it." They kissed under the starry New York sky, and when they pulled apart, they were both smiling. Tomorrow would begin a new phase of their lives together. There would be challenges for sure, there would be difficult moments, but they would face everything side by side as a family, and that made all the difference. Ryan looked up at the stars and thought of Laura, asleep with her new ring, dreaming of flower girl dresses and wedding cakes. He thought of Caroline, strong and resilient, who had learned to trust again. And he thought of himself completely transformed by the power of an innocent request and the courage to open himself up to love. The letter had asked for a dad who would like them and stay, and the universe had answered, giving them not just that, but so much more. It had given them all a second chance at happiness, at being a real family, and this time no one was leaving. This time they were together forever. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Ryan, Caroline, and Laura has warmed your hearts this Christmas. Their journey shows us that sometimes the greatest gifts come in unexpected packages, and that it's never too late to find the love and family we've always been looking for. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day, we bring you narratives that celebrate love, hope, and the strength of the human spirit. Let us know in the comments which part of the story moved you the most. We'd love to know what you felt. And remember, just as Laura wrote her letter believing in miracles, sometimes all we need is the courage to ask for what our hearts desire. Until the next story, and may your Christmas be filled with love and family togetherness.